Hey everyone, welcome to the Rookie on Fire podcast. We are doing episode 3 today with one of my good friends, Isaac Nelson, who is a good friend of mine and a prior business partner, and yeah, just an amazing person. So, wanted to dig in today and talk with him about his journey into door-to-door sales and some of the things that he would change if he could go back, or some of the things that he feels that maybe he did well from his rookie year. So, that's what the podcast is all about. But yeah, Isaac, want to turn over to you and give a little bit of an intro about who you are and how you got into door-to-door sales.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks for having me on here. And yeah, so I actually taught tennis and came over to Arizona, and then it didn't work out the way that I want, so I jumped into construction. And then I was installing at my recruiter's house, not unknowing that he was my recruiter so far. And I installed his garage door, and as we started talking, which that's Brad here, he was like, "Bro, you should do this." This was back in 2015. I believe you were flipping a house or selling it. And anyways, we stayed in touch for about 2 years, and I kind of had a pivotal moment where I was like, "Man, I want more." And I knew that you were about my similar age, and so I was like, I'll reach out and be like, "Yo." We both kind of had been staying in touch. You were really good at that. So one day I just messaged and was like, is this real or not? And it was like, yeah, come out. And so I remember going out, pest control, and I called you up, got off work at like 5. It was what, November or something, October, late in the year. Sun was going down by like we had an hour maybe. So I get out to area, and you slam down 2 deals right in front of me, and I was like, holy crap, let's see it, do it one more time, and then I'm in. And that was it. And then I think I wanted to start right away, and you were like, wait till January because there was no teams, and I was having my third kid in that moment, so it was a big jump for me. But yeah, that was kind of it. I started, yeah, jumped out of the construction world and got into the well, didn't really totally leave the construction world, but got into the heavy knocking
Yeah,
arena.
dude, I remember that. You were installing the garage door at that house I was selling, and I met you, and I was like, dude, you are crazy dynamic, bro. Like you can do so much more. Not that you know, installing a garage door isn't glamorous or whatever. Well, it's actually not, but I was like, you've got more to offer. You've got, and so we started talking. Me and Isaac, we both had 2 kids. We were like within a month of the same age. Like it felt like we were at the same position in our lives, but we had just taken way different paths. More entrepreneurship for me, and Isaac had gone down the tech route. And what's funny is that I feel like if I would have gotten into a construction job like that, or a pest control technician, or a garage door installer, like I would have done the same thing. I would have been super loyal. I think you had been at that company for 4 or 5, 6 years, and super loyal. You were their best technician. You were the number one guy, the guy they would lean on for all the hard jobs, the guy that would travel. And I'm like, that's me. Like I would have been that just honest, loyal, hardworking dude wherever I ended up. I happened to just fall into the channel of door to door sales early on, and I ran with that, and put all that energy into that. And so it was cool to, to yeah, it took a few years, and he ended up seeing some deals go down, and then from there, Isaac joined, doing pest control with us over at Bulwark Exterminating, and instantly became the top rookie, and just led the whole year doing sales, and ended up selling close to 400 accounts. And that's not easy to do. And so it was really cool to see
Yeah.
that. And so as you go into door to door, there's so many things that get thrown at you, from selling and recruiting and trying to stay motivated and trying to make sure the wife is still on board, and because with having your third kid and jumping into door to door, that's not the typical situation. So tell us a little bit about what you learned or conversations you had with your wife, um, around that, because I think some of the listeners are maybe people that are in your boat, where they're like not that typical 20-year-old dude or 18-year-old dude that's jumping into door to door, and they have everything to, they have nothing to lose. You had everything to lose. You
Yeah.
had a good job. You had, you know, the reputation with like your wife and jumping in, like you had to be like, "Yo, I'm doing this," and you couldn't let it fail. But like, tell me about those emotions, and go back to that moment.
Yeah, man. I might start crying, so be careful. No. Uh, in that moment, it was tough. I had asked for ownership in the previous company that I was at because I felt like I was just so loyal and I was so studious there, and my trainer kind of had asked for it and then left, and it was a moment where I was like, okay, I got to start my own thing, and then I'm like, how do I do that exactly? And being able to see like other people succeeding at my same age. So I knew that there was more out there. And so my wife had really just trusted that I'd make money somehow. And I promised her that no matter what, you won't go a day without being able to put food on the table. And that was really important to me to make sure that like, hey, you will always be like, as long as we don't go crazy and overspend on anything, we'll always be good. And so that was a big pride thing for me. And so it was a hard conversation, and it was a easier, I'd say it was a easier conversation come like January when it started. But man, pest control was a dream. I remember driving home and just crying, calling you and being like, "Is this real?" Just like that. January was similar or it was easier because I had a chunk of money put aside, but it was after January, it was like, okay, we're starting to eat into savings a little bit because, I'm waiting for these accounts to clear. I'm waiting for them to get service, things like that. And so I think, I mean, it was like 3, 4 months of just like, is this real? Like, promise me that this is real. And I'm calling you just, crying because I know the drive home, I'm like, I'm, I'm having a hard time because the minute I walk through that door, I have to be like I'm good. Everything's good. There's no worries at all. And that was really hard
But
at the beginning
were
because
you crying
we
because you
were we
didn't you were
we were
closing
having
deals every day, so you weren't crying because you weren't.
yeah, yeah. Those,
Okay.
yeah. I wasn't crying because the money was not, I was used to every other week we're getting paid and my check, and I was making sales every day, but you get a little bit up front, and it was enough, but it wasn't like, and I was getting exhausted. I also at that time started a separate garage door company. So I was getting up at like 5, 6 a.m., going and like passing out flyers and knocking doors and doing kind of whatever for people till about noon, and then I'd swap shirts and go knock the rest of the day. So I was exhausted by the end of the day. So it was probably just fatigue that's what made me emotional. But then we were having a kid in come February, and my wife just wasn't seeing consistent, like, I don't know, something about it just felt off for her. And she was like, something's not right. Like, we got to make more. We got to make more. And anyways, and that was tough, especially because she was kind of, getting ready to have a third kid, and in there. And then I remember in like May, I think I got like a back end check, and immediately I went home, and she had been like, you know, kind of harping like, hey, we got to get this thing flowing, like let's get more. And then that check came in, and she's like, why haven't we been doing this the whole time? And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, sick, like
Yeah.
I got you back on my side type scenario. So yeah, that first year was, man, what a rush of emotions for the first portion of the year, just to like believing that it was working, but having, I think if I was single and just like had nothing to care about, it wouldn't have been so like extremely stressful. But it was a lot more because I did have 3 kids, mortgage, insurance, I mean just everything.
Yeah.
And
So what? Yeah. So one of the
so it
things
was wild.
that you would probably do different is try to set a better expectation with your spouse. Or maybe you did, and it still was just the reality of the situation that still sometimes kicks you in the teeth, and you're like, holy crap, like I'm used to the every other week getting $1,000 or whatever, and now it's less and it's sporadic and it feels super uncomfortable. Um, but yeah, dude, I appreciate you sharing that because it's your perspective is. I remember those phone calls and thinking like, man, I didn't have to live through that. I couldn't really give a ton of like advice from like what I had been through, because when I
Mm.
started, I had just was barely getting married. I did one summer before I was married, and then I did door to door more year round, and so I just kind of had a consistent check. They were different every week, but they were just it was I kind of grew that way, and so um, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of people listening that will think or that will be able to relate to that have this scenario and find some
Yeah.
peace in that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so you get through
Yeah.
that, you start getting the back end checks, it starts flowing. You're like, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Your wife, the wife saying you should have done this years ago, or it would have been nice to have started doing this years ago, and that's probably one of the best feelings
Yeah.
in the world. And then you go on to sell 365 or close to 400 accounts, um, and have a killer year. The next year, you manage a team, and then we became partners, got into solar, um, did that for a few years, um, up until 2021, near the end of
Awesome.
2021, and then that's when I went full time rep card, and you went and did solar and did some other things. And so throughout this journey, you've had now it's 2024. You started in 2017. It's been 6 7 years that you've been in the door to door game, and so you've learned a ton.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of stay in that first year and have you
Yeah.
speak to any. What are one or two things that come to mind? Um, Things that you would change or things that you would do differently, um, that would have maybe impacted where you're at today, or have just been something you wished you would have done.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So looking at it, what would I change? It's tough because I don't think like I had I had a fire behind me and I was like I have to like perform. And so I it's hard to say that I'd change a lot. I think expectation with my wife, I think she was just seeing like um different things, but as soon as that happened it was like her trust was back in like okay, we got this, we can do this. um and that first year, I don't know, I felt like we had Aaron Seaver, which was a trainer, and I absorbed a ton from that year. But what I wish I would have done was like seen some of the heavy hitters a little bit more, and like tried to just absorb a lot more from them specifically and what what specifically they were doing, that they were dropping big days like 8 to 10 a day, and it was like okay, sick, like what can I do to like perform in that versus what I'm doing today. And so just absorbing just the higher performers and really focusing on that. I think I was I loved incentives, and so it was fun that those were able to push. And but I don't know if I could change anything that first year because it was jumping in and just listening. I did a lot of listening, and I felt like, and today I do a lot more talking. I need to go back to listening. But um yeah, and that but that first year was, I don't know, it was like it was primed up for me, and I think I feel really good for that year because the amount that I learned and the growth that I had to just understand like this game is freaking hard, but you get better. The game never gets easier. You get better, and that was it. But that first year, yeah, what I would say possibly is just like really hone in on understanding where my money was specifically going. Like I made good moves from what I feel like, but looking back, I'm like, oh, I could have been like um possibly making smaller investments, making like stocks, like just little contributions in different areas and really understanding, because I think I was so deeply focused on the just making more money versus understanding where my money was specifically going, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's probably an area that I would change on that, but more I would say the second year, because the first year was just like, we got to survive. Let's
Yeah.
see if this is real,
You're
and
just
let's
drinking from a
go.
fire
And we
hose.
made it with this.
There's a million things going
Yeah.
on. You're learning a ton. So what I heard you say was, you know, you didn't have any regret. It's not like you have this like aching regret that's just like, oh man, like you're mad about it. But it's like, hey, if you could go back, there's two things. Number one, you would just kind of the power of proximity. You would just go get around those closers and take the shortcut and just learn from those guys that are doing the 10, 12, 15 a day and just really try to pick their brain more and maybe not be as scared to reach out to them or whatever caused you to not do that. And we'll talk about that in a second. I'd like to ask you more about that, maybe why you didn't do that, or maybe you thought about it after. I don't know, but and then the other thing was just to not focus so much on or focus on making the money, but focus on how to distribute it, how to invest it. You can go to Robinhood and just say, I want to buy $25 in, Apple stock every week, $100 a month. It just buys it every
Mhm.
week, and I'm sure that if you started that 7 years ago and you did it till today, you would probably have, a handful of shares in Apple that are worth a lot more than they were 7 years ago. And it would just be there. And so, um, that's really good advice. So yeah, take me back to that. I mean, do you remember any of the names of the people that were selling, or why you didn't reach out to them, or why you didn't, or how based on what you know now, how would you reach out to someone if someone's listening and they're like, man, I know a few of the big hitters in my company, but I'm nervous or scared, or they're on a different team or a different region, or maybe a different company. Maybe you see them on Instagram and you're
Yeah.
like, dude, this guy crushes it. How do they reach out?
Yeah.
What's a good formula for that?
I mean, I go back. I just don't. Social media was. I just don't feel like it was as big, and it wasn't like all the heavy hitters weren't on there, so you didn't really know what it was. But at the end of the year, like I remember going to the first door to door con with you, and or that I went to, not the very first one, I don't think, but anyways, my first one, and like hearing the numbers that were on stage, and that's when I was like, holy crap! Like, and I think that's where I understood, like, dang, I want to, where are these guys at specifically? I want to be in an arena. Well, I just want to shadow them for a minute. And, um, and so, yeah. And it was that, I think that's more of where it was versus I wasn't throughout the year. I wasn't necessarily seeing them performing and being like, oh man, I want it. Like today, you got all the heavy hitters that are all over social media, and they're like, dude, if they're not posting, they're not selling. Like it's crazy today versus just a couple years ago. And but yeah, I think the more that I go to those conferences too, and just hearing the numbers that guys are putting up, it's crazy to watch it, and then you get to follow them and see kind of what they're doing. And so I wouldn't say that I was like, that's looking back today because I have the knowledge of today and the numbers to be able to see it. But in the moment that year, um, I felt like I was selling just as much as
Well,
some
you
of the
you were leading the
others.
pack, especially in the rookies, and even amongst the company. I mean, 365 accounts is huge, especially for 2017. I know nowadays some guys are selling 800 accounts at $1,000 contract value, and the pest control game has gone wild. But
Yeah.
going back to 2017, selling in Arizona, one of the hottest places on the planet in the summer, one of the most competitive for pest control. I know the numbers we were selling. We were selling 600 plus contract values, which is massive for Arizona. Um,
Mhm.
you were hitting all that, and so you were getting a lot of praise from within, our network at Bulwark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy to go to door con and see some dude that threw down 800 accounts. I don't know many guys that
Yeah.
were selling big contract values more than maybe 600 or 700 back then, um,
Yeah.
but yeah. So nowadays, yeah, it's just reach out. Like most of those guys on social, they're pretty
Yeah.
open. And so if you're listening,
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
Isaac's advice on, find people within your company or outside of your company that are crushing it and just reach out. You know, You can't be needy and be like, hey, can I come shadow you for a week? But hey, can I shadow you for an hour? Hey, if you know, I don't know, if I bought you a pair of shoes, would you like do something make an
Yeah,
exchange, give them a reason to take you serious, and then listen. Isaac said that his first year there was a
totally.
lot of listening, and so um, go do that and go listen to them. And so
Yeah, I'd even add to that. Like if you're a manager too and you got your guys, like look out for guys that are killing it and then try and reach out for your guys because if they can be in that same arena. I so go back way back. I played tennis at a very high level and got college scholarships and everything, but to get to that level, I had to play with very, very high level guys to be able to get better. And so being able to see that in turn, like if you're a manager and you want your guys to be better, find a rabbit that they can chase. But a lot of times too, that rabbit might be committed to another company, and don't be scared to reach out to that guy and be like, "Hey, dude, you know, can I pay you to come over, or can I whatever to just show my guys or whatever?" And don't be scared. Build the atmosphere where guys love you and they're gonna stay around for you, and they're not only chasing it so that you're scared to bring in heavy hitters and be
yeah,
like, hey, check this guy out. He's
yeah,
cranking. So that's what I'd say too
that's
to
a
add to
great
that.
point,
But
dude. You think of like guys like Michael O'Donnell in the solar space, like he owns his own solar company, sells solar, but he's out there coaching and training other teams. And those teams, when I first started seeing that, I saw like Spartan Solar had Michael O'Donnell in their office a few years ago, and one of the initial just thoughts in my head was like, oh, what if those reps leave and want to go work with Michael? And like, oh my gosh, it's just like that fear that you always have as like a recruiter and door to door, like from my early days of like everyone else is bad and we're the only good company in town. And it's like it's not true, but sometimes I think the landscape has changed where it's like, hey, it's okay to collaborate and share, and you can have a top hitter from another company come and help out and someone else and collaborate, and not be so scared and fearful, but be abundant and just live in the moment. Like you said, take care of your people. They want to follow leaders. They're not going to just follow a logo and be like, I'm staying here because this company has cool swag. Like they're going to stay for the leadership. And so um, that's awesome. Um, well, dude, let's wrap this thing up. Um, where can people follow you or reach out to you? What are you doing today? Let's just kind of give them a quick snapshot of what you're up to and where they can find you on
yeah,
social media.
um, yeah. So I do more permanent holiday lighting now, and I get that. We're actually starting to knock doors for it, so it's been super exciting. And yeah, you can follow. You jump on Instagram and follow. I don't even know what my freaking hashtag is, but it's like at itnell89 or something like that. But look up Isaac Nelson, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome, dude.
If not, I'll put it down. No, I'm just playing.
Well, that's awesome, man. It's cool to see you still using the door to door, the skill set that you learned years ago to continue to use it in your businesses. It's always a good channel to get a business going or to add additional revenue. Um, so I appreciate you jumping on the podcast today, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
Dope. Thanks.
Peace.
We'll see you guys.